What if I told you that the government may have hidden evidence of extraterrestrial life? In 1947, something fell in the New Mexico desert, but what was it? The Second World War was over, but the world was plunged into a new era of military secrets and technological advances. The fear of unknown forces hung in the air. And it was in this context that something extraordinary happened in the New Mexico desert. At the beginning of July, William Mac Brazel, a farmer who lived about 120 kilometers from the town of Roswell, found mysterious fragments scattered around his property. They were very thin pieces of metal, as light as paper, but impossible to bend or break. Among the debris, there were unusual rods, sheets that resembled aluminum, but were much more resistant, and, most enigmatically, small fragments covered in symbols that no one could identify. At first, Brazel didn't pay much attention to the find. After all, military exercises in the region were not uncommon. But then something caught his attention: reports from local residents who said they had seen strange lights in the sky the night before, some of them moving in a way that was impossible for any aircraft at the time. With this in mind, he decided to take the information to Sheriff George Wilcox of Chavez County. Wilcox, intrigued and perhaps fearing that he was facing something much bigger than a simple wreck, contacted Roswell Air Base. And that's when the story took an even more sinister turn. A few hours later, soldiers from the Air Force's 509th Bombardment Group arrived at Brazel's property. The team was led by Major Jesse Marcel, one of the base's most experienced intelligence officers. They searched the area and quickly confiscated the fragments. But what they found was so surprising that, on July 8, 1947, the Roswell Air Force itself made an official announcement. The statement was made by none other than Lieutenant Walter Oates, the base's press officer. The Army had recovered a flying saucer. The news spread like wildfire. The Roswell Daily Record headlined, "RAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." The world was shocked. Never before had a military institution admitted something of this magnitude. But the euphoria was short-lived. Less than 24 hours later, a strange twist occurred. The Army quickly changed its version of the story. At a press conference held in Fort Worth, Texas, General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, declared that it was all just a misunderstanding. According to him, the debris found was just the remains of an experimental weather balloon. And to reinforce this new version, they released photos of Major Jesse Marcel holding the supposed wreckage of the balloon. But something seemed strange. The same man who, hours earlier, had described the wreckage as something he had never seen before, was now posing for the press holding pieces of an ordinary balloon. The case seemed closed, at least officially. But for many, the government's explanation didn't make sense. After all, how could one of the most advanced military groups in the United States mistake a simple balloon for something so extraordinary? Could it be that, in that summer of 1947, something much bigger had happened in Roswell? Something that the government wanted to hide at all costs? To this day, documents continue to be declassified, new witnesses emerge, and the doubt persists: what really crashed in the New Mexico desert that July night? After the mysterious cover-up in July 1947, the Roswell Incident fell by the wayside. The Army managed to silence the controversy with a convenient explanation: a mere weather balloon. The press moved on, and the case seemed resolved. But that wouldn't be the last time Roswell entered the spotlight. Decades later, in the 1970s, the subject resurfaced when independent researchers and ufologists began to investigate the event. Witness accounts began to appear. Former military personnel and civilians began to talk about what really happened behind the scenes. But it was in 1978 that a bombshell was dropped. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer from Roswell Air Force Base who had taken part in the recovery of the wreckage, gave an interview to renowned researcher Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist who investigated ufological cases. Marcel, now retired, broke decades of silence and made a shocking revelation. What he found on that ranch in 1947 was in no way a weather balloon. In his interview, he described the material with details that totally contradicted the official version. The wreckage was extremely light, but impossible to bend or break. Some pieces had unknown symbols, similar to hieroglyphics, engraved on their surfaces. The materials seemed to have a non-human origin. Marcel revealed something even more disturbing. He had been forced to pose for photos holding fake debris, pieces of an ordinary weather balloon. The real stuff, according to him, was immediately confiscated and sent to a top-secret facility. If the Army covered up the truth, where did the original debris go? There are indications that the material was transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where, according to rumors, a top-secret sector called Hangar 18 operated. Unconfirmed reports suggest that, in addition to the fragments, something else was recovered at Roswell, something that could change human history forever. The influential Senator Barry Goldwater, who was also a general in the Air Force, tried to access the Hangar 18 facilities. His request was immediately denied, and he was warned not to press the issue. I was told very clearly that I could not go in there and that the matter was highly confidential. I believe that something very important is being hidden in that facility. Over the years, several ex-military and anonymous officials have reported that Hangar 18 houses pieces of alien technology that have been studied secretly. According to these sources, the U.S. has conducted experiments to replicate extraterrestrial technology, leading to surprising advances in various areas, such as microchips and integrated circuits, fiber optics, stealth technology used in military aircraft and materials with properties unknown to conventional science. Curiously, these technological advances began to emerge a few decades after Roswell, raising suspicions that humanity had received a push from outside the Earth. The U.S. government has never acknowledged the existence of alien artifacts in Hangar 18, but the Wright-Patterson base remains under a very high level of security to this day. Military documents relating to the Roswell case are still classified as confidential, even after more than 75 years. It's important to note that Jesse Marcel's revelation was only the beginning. In the following years, new witnesses would emerge, documents would begin to leak, and the Roswell Incident would become one of the biggest conspiracy cases in modern history. But the question remains, what really crashed in the New Mexico desert in 1947? And why, after so many decades, is the truth still hidden? If what Marcel said was true, then the official story was a lie carefully constructed to hide something much bigger. But something much more disturbing began to emerge in the 1990s. Witnesses began to report that what crashed in the New Mexico desert was not just a spacecraft, but that there were crew members on board. Classified information began to leak out, suggesting that the bodies of non-human beings had been found at the crash site and removed by the Army in a highly secretive operation. But are these allegations just fabricated stories or evidence of one of the biggest cover-ups in history? Among the most striking testimonies from that period, one stood out. Glenn Dennis, a former employee of a funeral home in Roswell, revealed something appalling. He said that, at the time of the incident, he received a phone call from military personnel at Roswell Air Force Base with an unusual request: small, hermetically sealed coffins. Why would the Army need children's coffins in the midst of an event that supposedly only involved debris from a weather balloon? Dennis also claimed to have spoken to a nurse at the base who made a disturbing confession. In a tone of despair, she reported that she had seen the bodies of small beings, with grayish skin and disproportionately large eyes, being analyzed inside the military facilities. Shortly afterwards, this nurse disappeared. Her whereabouts have never been clarified. If there were bodies, where was the evidence? In 1995, British producer Ray Santilli released a bombastic video to the world, the famous Alien Autopsy film. The video, supposedly recorded shortly after the 1947 incident, showed military doctors carrying out a detailed autopsy on an extraterrestrial-looking being. The footage caused a global frenzy. Was it definitive proof that the U.S. government had recovered not only a spacecraft, but also its occupants? Years later, Santilli admitted that the video was actually a recreation based on a supposed real film he claimed to have seen, but which had deteriorated over time. The producer's admission served to discredit the case for some, but for others, it was just another attempt to obscure the truth. From the 1990s onwards, new documents began to be released to the public, but always with inconsistent or censored information. In 1994, the U.S. government published a report claiming that the Roswell wreckage was part of a secret project called Mogul, designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The reports of alien bodies, on the other hand, were dismissed as distorted memories of high-altitude dummy tests carried out only in the 1950s, an explanation which, curiously, does not match the dates of the incident. If the witnesses were wrong or lying, why would the government need to change its version of the facts twice over the decades? What really fell in Roswell in July 1947? Was it just metallic debris or something much more significant? The truth remains fragmented, hidden in classified documents and silenced reports. But one thing is certain, the Roswell case is far from being just a mistake or a misunderstanding. If there was a conspiracy to hide the truth, then what else could be hidden from us?